welcome to this session. It is session 6 of Unit 2, Questioning and Questioning Skills. Do you just ask your questions in class? Do you ask anyhow? Do you call your students even before you ask your questions? You need certain skills, you need certain techniques in questioning. And so this session is going to equip us with such techniques. Let's look at our objective. At the end of this session, you should be able to explain the various techniques of questioning expected of chemistry teacher. Let's make progress. Techniques of questioning. When you go to class, how do you practice questioning? Do you just ask your questions anyhow? Do you have any special techniques of doing so? These are the techniques this is the technique you have to use in asking or in questioning. You have to question first. Sometimes we are tempted to call respondents before we ask the questions. That is wrong. Except when you have a very special reason for doing that. Other than that, ask the question first. Don't call students before you pose the question. If you ask the question first, it directs students' attention to the question. Then you have to adjust to suit particular personalities in the classroom. Remember, your students are not at the same level, and how you put it to one student for him to answer, when you put it the same way to another student, he may not be able to answer. You have to adjust the question. Even with the difficulty level, you would have to adjust for particular students in your class. Remember, if you ask a question, you call a student and he's not able to answer, that student at a point may not feel comfortable in your class. So if you are asking a question, you should make it in a way that the student you call will be able to answer. So adjust it to the level of that student you want him or her to answer your question. And if possible, do not repeat questions. If you repeat, then they may not pay attention to your first questions because they know you will be asking the questions again. So for them to pay close attention to you, don't repeat questions. They know that if they miss it, that is all. And they will pay much attention to you. So ask a question first before you call your student to answer. When you ask the question, allow a waiting time. Allow students some time to ponder over the question before you call for answers. That doesn't also mean that allocate too much time for this purpose. So the time you are going to allow for students to think about questions depends on the difficulty level of the question that you have posed to your students. Allow students a moment to ponder over the question for an answer. And then, after allowing that time, you now call students to answer the questions. It is very prudent to call students by their names rather than pointing fingers. Yes, you. Yes, you. It doesn't help. Call students by their name. In that case, they feel that they are included in the class, and they also feel that you know them. And it's a big thing for a student to be known by a teacher. So call them by their name to boost their confidence level and for them to also feel that they are in the class. Do not point fingers at them. And so you should know the names of your students. Sometimes we are tempted to call some few students going by this, calling their names only. We are tempted to just call few students that we know them and we know their names. So always our questions, they are the people who are going to answer. No, that shouldn't be the case. So you should know all of your students. Students should not be forced to answer questions. Don't try that. Don't limit a particular question to a particular student, such that if the student is not able to answer, you have to wait till he finds answer to that question. In that case, if he's not able to answer, he feels very uncomfortable, and that impairs with his or her learning. So if you ask a question, you allow a wait time, you call the student, and it is not able to answer, quickly you move on to the next person or somebody who is ready to answer, rather than forcing a particular student to answer your questions. When you call students to answer the questions, what do you do as a teacher? You have to listen to the answers. Be alert to answers given by students to the question that you have asked. Now, if you don't pay attention to answers that students are providing, you may only hear a small part that you might think is right, and so you give the student the nod that it is alright. You will go and write the same thing somewhere or give the same response somewhere and would be marked down. So listen to the length and breadth of the response the student is giving. Don't call for answers and you are talking to somebody, or you are looking elsewhere, or your attention is somewhere. You have to pay close attention to the student, so that when he is wrong, you know that he is wrong. When he is right, you know that he is right. Discourage chorus answers. Some questions, some way, somehow, majority of the students in the class may have answers to the question. So when you ask, they are all in a rush to answer and they'll just be shouting the answer. Don't encourage that. Even if they all rush to answer, still call somebody to answer. Discourage chorus answers unless you have a special reason for doing that, for accepting chorus answers. And when the answers come, you have to comment on the answer. Effective communication requires a feedback to the student. So when the students, you call and they answer, comment on the answer. Thus, you should be very careful not to give a comment that will demoralize the student. The student may have given a very wrong or a funny answer to the question that you asked. Please be very patient, take your time, and then give the right comment. Don't give a comment that at the end the student will have to recoil into his shells and he wouldn't answer your questions again. If the answer a student is giving you is even insulting, please do not vent your anger. Do not show that. Vent your anger in the classroom. Control yourself. Provide the right comment. Ask questions which require different levels of reasoning. By this, you have to challenge students with probing questions. Ask recall questions to check retention. Okay. Also, try to ask divergent and convergent questions. You may have to blend them. Sometimes you need open-ended questions. Ask questions that do not require clear-cut answers, but try to blend such questions with those ones that require clear-cut answers. Ask questions in a logical and sequential way. Avoid disjointed questions. First question is on A, second question is on Z. At least the questions should as well be a bit related. You may have asked students to define move in your first question. Maybe such question, a follow-up question would be where they have to calculate the number of moves or something, so that the questions that you ask are not separate, they are not disjointed, because disjointed questions make the learning process illogical and difficult for students to follow. If your first question is what is mole, and right under what is mole, they are to calculate EMF, or they are to find an answer to an organic chemistry question down there. It makes it hard for them to follow. So those are the techniques you need in asking or in questioning. We end the session with these self-assessment questions. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.